The night over the alien capital was silent, but inside the Queen's palace, chaos was spreading like fire. The great halls echoed with the sound of armored boots, shouted orders, and panicked whispers. Servants rushed through the corridors, their faces pale. Guards stormed into chambers, searching every corner, every shadow. The reason was clear and terrifying. The Queen's daughters were gone. They had been seen earlier in the evening, playing in the inner garden. To small figures, with shining silver hair and bright violet eyes, laughing under the moonlight. The garden had always been the safest place, surrounded by high walls, guarded by elite soldiers. No one could enter without permission. No one could escape without notice. And yet, when the guards checked again, the daughters had vanished. The Queen stood in the center of the throne room, her long cloak trailing behind her, her eyes glowing with fury. She was not just a ruler, she was a warrior who had crushed empires. But now, her hands trembled as she clenched the golden staff of power. "Find them," her voice roared, shaking the pillars of the palace. "Search every street, every house, every cave in this cursed world. Bring me my daughters, or bring me the heads of those who failed to guard them." The guards bowed low, fear in their hearts. They had never seen her so close to madness. Whispers spread among the court. Some said the girls had been kidnapped by rival clans who wanted to break the Queen's power. Others said assassins had taken them to force her into surrender. A few even dared to whisper something darker, that perhaps someone within the palace itself had betrayed her. But none dared to speak this thought aloud. The Queen's daughters were not only precious because of bloodline, they were symbols of the Empire's future. If they were lost, the enemies would rise. If they were killed, hope itself would die. The Queen knew this. That was why her rage was so great. Outside the palace, the search spread into the city. Torches lit up the night as soldiers marched through the markets, demanding answers. Houses were broken into, walls torn down, but the daughters were nowhere to be found. The Queen returned to her private chamber, alone. For the first time in years, she felt helpless. She sat on the edge of her throne, staring at the floor. Memories of her daughters filled her mind, the way they used to hide under her cloak when frightened, the way they smiled when she returned from battle. She had fought 100 wars and survived 1,000 betrayals. But nothing frightened her like this silence, this absence. In another part of the world, far from the palace lights, a human traveler was setting up camp. He was an outsider here, a man who wandered from place to place, looking for work, food, and shelter. The stars above were strange to him, but he had grown used to living under alien skies. He built a small fire, warmed his hands, and lay back on the hard ground. The night wind was cold, carrying the cries of distant creatures. He closed his eyes, unaware that his life was about to change forever. Behind the trees, two small figures moved silently. Their clothes were torn, their hair messy, their steps unsteady. They were tired, scared, and hungry, but their eyes still glowed faintly in the dark. The human did not notice them yet. He only felt a strange unease, as if someone was watching him. He sat up, staring into the shadows. The firelight flickered, showing nothing but branches and leaves. Still, his heart beat faster. He picked up a stick, more for comfort than for defense. Then he heard its soft breathing, like that of frightened children. He froze. Slowly, he turned his head, and in that moment, the story truly began. Back at the palace, the Queen swore an oath before her ancestors. Her voice was heavy, her eyes full of fire. "I will not sleep until my daughters are returned to me. If they are harmed, I will burn every world between here and the edge of the galaxy." The stars outside the palace seemed to tremble at her words. But destiny had already chosen a different path. The daughters were no longer within her reach. They were moving into the hands of someone she would never have expected. Someone who was not alien. Someone who was human. And by the time she learned the truth, it would be too late. The disappearance was not the end. It was only the beginning. The Queen's orders echoed across the capital. Within hours, soldiers spread into the deserts, forests, and mountains. Whole battalions marched with banners of the crown, their armor shining under alien moons. Flyers scanned the ground from above, their searchlights sweeping across villages. But nothing was found. Not a trace, not a scream, not even a broken toy, until one soldier noticed something strange on the edge of the eastern desert dot in the pale sand. Where the wind could not yet erase the signs, there were tracks, small feet pressed into the dust, side by side, too small for adults, too light to belong to soldiers. They moved in a straight line, steady but hurried as if to children had run. Without looking back, the soldier dropped to his knees, his heart racing. He knew whose prince these could be. He pressed his hand against the sand, whispering, "The princesses." Word spread quickly. Within moments, the queen herself arrived. Riding her black beast of war, she dismounted with fire in her eyes, her gaze locked on the footprints. "They live," she whispered. For the first time, her voice carried a spark of hope, but that hope was poisoned by fury. "Then someone dares hide them from me." The trackers moved fast, but the trail grew stranger. After a while, the small footprints were joined by something else, larger, heavier prints. The shape was odd, not alien, not beast. It was different. Some of the soldiers tilted their heads in confusion. "This is no creature of our world," one muttered. The queen knelt, touching the unfamiliar mark. It was a boot print. She had seen it once before, long ago, during a war with wandering offworlders. A human's boot. Her eyes narrowed. A human walks with them. The court was shaken. Many shouted that this was proof of kidnapping. Others claimed it was a trick, that humans were weak and could never slip past alien soldiers. But the queen said nothing. Her silence was more terrifying than her rage. Far away, the human traveler was already facing the truth of what had followed him. He had discovered the girls that night, when he heard them breathing near his fire. At first, he thought they were thieves, hungry, desperate wanderers trying to steal his pack. But when he turned and saw their glowing violet eyes, his breath caught. They weren't ordinary children. Their faces were too fine, too noble. The girls were trembling, their hands clutching each other tightly. Dirt streaked their cheeks, but beneath the dust, he saw the markings of royalty ornaments woven into their hair. Half broken but still shining, he crouched low, trying to soften his voice. "Hey, you don't need to run." The younger one buried her face into her sister's shoulder. The older one stared at him with defiance, even through her fear. "You're human," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but her eyes burned. "Yes," he admitted, unsure if this was good or bad in their eyes. "And you?" She didn't answer. She only looked away, clutching her sister tighter. He sighed and pulled out a small piece of bread from his pack. Slowly, he placed it on the ground between them and stepped back. "Eat. You must be hungry." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the younger one reached out and grabbed the bread with trembling fingers. She bit into it, her eyes wide with relief. The older one still watched him carefully, as if deciding whether he was a savior or another danger. The human lay back, against a rock, letting the fire crackle. "Stay if you want. Leave if you must. I won't stop you." That night, he did not sleep. He only stared at the stars, hearing their soft breathing near his fire. Back in the desert, the queen's army pressed forward. The bootprints told a story that a human had crossed paths with the royal blood. Whether he had stolen them or saved them was unknown. But one thing was clear. He had them now. The queen's fury grew. "Find this human," she commanded. "Alive or dead, bring me his body. If he has harmed them, I will make him beg for mercy." But deep inside her heart, a thought gnawed at her. Why would her daughters walk beside a human instead of fleeing? Why had they not cried for help when soldiers were near? The question was dangerous. It was unthinkable, but it would not leave her mind. The human awoke at dawn to find the girls curled up near his fire. One was resting her head on his pack, the other clutching his arm as if afraid he would vanish. He stared at them for a long time, confused. They weren't just strangers now. Somehow, in the middle of the desert night, he had become their protector. He whispered to himself, "What have I gotten into?" But as the sun rose, he already knew the answer. He couldn't walk away. The dust had carried their tracks, but it also carried fate. Soldiers followed with rage in their hearts. The queen followed with fire in her soul. And a human carried a secret that could either destroy him or change everything. The chase had begun. The desert morning burned hot. Waves of heat rose from the sand as the human packed his few belongings. He glanced at the two alien girls, still sitting near the ashes of the fire. Their silver hair shone in the sun, tangled and dusty, their violet eyes tired yet sharp. He knew by now they weren't ordinary children. Their presence carried something heavy, something royal. He had seen the ornaments in their hair, broken but unmistakable. He had heard the way they whispered to each other in a refined tongue. Not the chatter of street kids, but he kept his thoughts quiet. If they wanted to tell him who they were, they would. He tightened the straps of his pack. We should move. Soldiers will sweep this area soon. The older girl narrowed her eyes. Why would you help us? The question cut sharp. He paused, looking at her. Because I know what it's like to run. The younger one tilted her head, curious. The older one stayed silent, but something in her gaze shifted. Far away, in the capital, the queen listened as scouts reported the trail. Her daughter's tracks grew weaker, harder to follow, but the human's bootprints remained clear. He carries them, one scout said. The queen's hand gripped her staff so hard that the golden metal cracked. A thief, a coward, a human dares touch royal blood, but in her heart, unease stirred. The daughters had not been dragged. Their steps were steady. They had walked beside him. The thought was unbearable. She ordered the army forward. Back, in the desert, the human led the girls through dry canyons. He kept them away from the main roads, moving only in the shadows. The heat was merciless. The youngest stumbled often, her face pale from exhaustion. Without a word, the human knelt, letting her climb onto his back. She clung to his neck, too tired to resist. Her sister stared, astonished. Why do you carry her? We slow you down. He shrugged. Then I'll be slower. The older girl's lips parted, but no sound came out. For the first time since she had met him, she did not have an answer. That evening, they reached a hidden cave. Cool air flowed from within. The human set down his pack, built a small fire, and gave them water. He didn't ask questions. He didn't demand thanks. The younger one leaned against him, finally feeling safe enough to sleep. The older one sat close, her eyes studying him carefully. You are not afraid of my people, she said. He looked at her across the fire. Should I be? Her voice was sharp. We could kill you. He smirked. If you wanted me dead, I'd already be dead. Silence fell between them. Then, for the first time, she smiled faintly, just a shadow of one. But outside, danger was closing in. The queen's scouts had found traces near the canyon. Torn fabric from royal silk, caught on a branch, a small handprint in the dust. Proof that they were alive, proof they were still with him. The queen ordered the trackers to tighten the circle. Hunt the human like prey, she commanded. Do not stop until his blood soaks the sand. Inside the cave, the human sat awake while the girls slept. He stared into the fire, conflicted. He was no hero. He was just a wanderer, drifting from place to place. He had nothing, no home, no family, no safety. Yet here he was, protecting the alien princesses. If soldiers discovered them, he would be executed. If bounty hunters found them, he would be torn apart. So why didn't he leave them? He looked at the girls, curled up together on the ground, their small hands clutching each other, their breathing soft, fragile. He whispered to himself, because no one deserves to be alone. The secret grew heavier with each passing hour. He knew who they were now. He had seen their faces on banners in the city, carved in stone above the palace gates. He carried the queen's daughter's royal heirs whose disappearance shook the empire. If he revealed them, he could earn wealth beyond imagination. If he betrayed them, he could win freedom from his wandering life. But the thought made his chest tighten. He couldn't imagine handing them over, not after seeing their fear. Not after carrying them through the desert. Not after the younger one had rested her head on his shoulder, like he was the only safe place in the world. At dawn, the sound of distant horns shattered the quiet. The human froze, listening. The girls woke, their eyes wide with terror. They're coming, the older one whispered. The human grabbed his pack, his voice steady. Then we keep moving. The younger clung to his hand. The older hesitated, staring at him as if searching for something, an answer, a reason, maybe even trust. Finally, She whispered, "If they find us, they will kill you first." He met her gaze without flinching. "Then I'll make sure they don't." The sisters exchanged a look, silent but powerful. For the first time, they weren't running alone. The desert winds howled as they stepped back into the rising sun. Soldiers drew closer with every heartbeat. But the daughters of the Queen walked beside a human now. And that secret, his secret, would change everything. The desert changed when the sun went down. Shadows stretched across the dunes, and the silence grew sharp, broken only by the distant howl of alien beasts. The human knew that night was not a time of rest, it was the time of hunters. He guided the two girls through a narrow canyon, its walls black against the starlit sky. Their steps were small and hurried, the crunch of sand beneath their feet sounding loud in the quiet. Every noise made them flinch. The younger one clutched his arm. "Are they close?" she whispered. He did not answer at first. He listened, eyes scanning the ridges above. The wind carried faint sounds, the clink of metal, the shuffle of boots, voices trying to stay hidden. Soldiers were out there. Too many, yes, he said finally, his voice low. "They're hunting, far behind them." The Queen's trackers lit no fires. They moved like wolves, guided by the glowing sands. Their leader raised a clawed hand, sniffing the air. "They passed here," he hissed. "The human carries them still." The Queen herself waited in her war camp, staring into the flames of her fire. She had sent her best to bring her daughters home. Yet deep inside, something gnawed at her. Would they come running into her arms when they were found? Or would they cling to the human instead? The fugitives reached a small cave. At the canyon's edge, the human pushed the girls inside and crouched at the entrance, scanning the dark. He could hear movement, shadows shifting above the cliffs. The older girl whispered sharply, "They will find us, not tonight." He replied, "You can't fight them all," she pressed. He smirked faintly. "I don't need to. I only need to keep you safe." Her eyes lingered on him, confused. He was human, weak, compared to her people. Yet the way he stood there, shoulders squared, body ready, gave her a strange sense of safety. The soldiers drew nearer. One of them leapt down the canyon wall, landing silently on the sand. His helmet's visor glowed red. He turned his head, scanning the rocks. Behind him, more followed, their weapons gleaming in the faint moonlight. The human's heart raced. He couldn't fight them. He had no weapon strong enough, no armor thick enough. All he had was wit. He reached into his pack, pulling out a small flare. He snapped it, and light exploded into the air. Bright and burning, he hurled it into the opposite cliff. The soldiers spun at the sudden light, weapons raised, rushing toward it. In that instant, he grabbed the girl's hands. "Run!" They darted deeper into the canyon, feet slipping on stone. The youngest gasped for breath, stumbling, but he lifted her into his arms, carrying her without slowing down. Behind them, the soldiers realized the trick. Their shouts rang out, echoing off the walls. The hunt was on. Hours passed like minutes. The night seemed endless, the stars cold and far. The human's lungs burned, his muscles screamed. But he never let go. The older girl ran beside him, her eyes wide with fear. Yet her hand never left his. At last, when their strength was nearly gone, they reached a dry riverbed. The human set the younger one down, leaning against a stone, chest heaving. The older girl stared at him, sweat dripped from his brow. But his grip on her sister had never faltered. "Why?" she whispered. "Why risk your life for us?" He looked at her, breathing hard. "Because no one else will." Her throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but words refused to come. In the distance, torches flickered. The soldiers were still searching. Their voices grew louder, their shadows stretching long across the dunes. The younger girl shivered, hiding her face. The older clenched her fists. For the first time, she hated her own people. They were supposed to protect them. Instead, it was a human who shielded them with his life. The human rose slowly, pulling them into the cover of broken rocks. "Sleep if you can," he said softly. "I'll keep watch." The younger girl curled up beside him, exhaustion claiming her. The older one sat awake, her violet eyes fixed on him. She had been raised to see humans as weak, unworthy. Yet here, in the silence of the night, she saw something different. He was not weak. He was unbreakable. High above, the soldiers prowled. They sniffed the sand, studied the prints. The trail was still fresh. Their leader raised a claw. They are close, very close. But when they searched the rocks, they found nothing. The human had covered their tracks, scattering sand, breaking the pattern. The night stretched on, full of danger, full of silence. But somehow, the three of them endured it together. At dawn, the first rays of light broke over the desert. The hunters withdrew for the day, snarling in frustration. The human leaned against the stone, his eyes heavy, his body aching. The younger girl woke and whispered, "You didn't sleep." He smiled faintly, "Didn't need to." The older girl stared at him, her voice soft but firm. "They will not stop." "I know," he said. He tightened the straps of his pack, ready to move again. "Then we keep running." And so, under the rising sun, the human and the queen's daughters stepped into another day of survival. The night had belonged to hunters, but the dawn belonged to them. The desert sun rose high, painting the sand in gold and fire. The human kept moving, the two girls close at his side. His clothes were torn, his throat dry, but he refused to stop. Every time he looked at them, tired, frightened, but still walking, he found new strength. They had survived another night of hunters, but he knew it couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, someone would see, someone would understand who they were. By midday, they reached the edge of a small trading outpost. Wooden stalls leaned against stone walls, covered in colorful cloth. Merchants shouted, selling food, water, and strange alien trinkets. The human hesitated. Crowds were dangerous, but without supplies, the girls wouldn't last another day. He pulled a hood low over his face and guided them inside. "Stay close," he whispered. The younger one clung to his hand. The older walked a step behind. Scanning everything with sharp eyes, they moved through the market, unnoticed at first. The human bought water, bread, and dried meat, slipping a few coins to the merchant. But then it happened. A woman at a nearby stall froze. Her gaze locked on the two girls. Her eyes widened as if she had seen ghosts. She whispered to the merchant beside her, her voice trembling. "The queen's daughters." The human stiffened. His heart slammed against his ribs. He turned quickly, pulling the girls deeper into the market. But whispers spread faster than fire. Faces turned. Fingers pointed. "They live," someone gasped. With a human, another spat. Within moments, armored scouts pushed into the market. Their helmets gleamed, their weapons ready. The crowd parted in silence as the soldiers' eyes fell on the human and on the royal children beside him. The older girl stepped forward instinctively, grabbing his arm. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. "Don't leave us." The human glanced down at her, then at the younger one, who was clinging tighter to him. For a heartbeat, he thought of running, but he saw the way the soldiers stared, hesitant, uncertain, even afraid. Something strange had happened. The daughters of the queen, lost for so long, weren't crying out for help. They weren't begging the soldiers to save them. They were holding onto him. The silence broke when one scout lowered his weapon. "Impossible," he whispered. "They trust him." News traveled at lightning speed. By the time the sun touched the horizon, the queen herself had arrived. Her war beast carried her through the market streets, the ground trembling under its steps. The crowd fell to their knees, heads bowed. The human stood still, the girls clutching him tighter than ever. His breath came shallow. He had never been so close to her before. The most feared ruler in the sector. The queen dismounted. Her cloak of black and gold trailed behind her as she walked. Her eyes glowed like fire when she saw them. Her daughters, alive, standing beside a human. The younger one cried out and hid her face in his chest. The older stood firm, her chin raised, but her hand never let go of his. The queen's rage shook the air. "What is this?" Her voice was thunder. "Why do my daughters cling to you, human? What spell have you cast?" The human's mouth went dry. He wanted to speak, but words failed. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a soldier. He was just a wanderer who had offered food and fire. Yet here he was, standing before an empire with two children clutching him as if he were their shield. The older girl stepped forward suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. "He saved us." The queen froze. "He carried us through the desert," she continued, her voice shaking but strong. "He gave us food. He hid us when soldiers came. He never asked who we were. He only kept us safe," the younger one raised her head, tears shining in her violet eyes. "Mama, we trust him." The market gasped. Even the soldiers lowered their weapons. The queen's face was unreadable, caught between fury and something deeper, something dangerously close to doubt. For the first time, the queen faltered, her staff lowered slightly, her hand trembling. She stared at the human, her daughters, clinging to him like he was part of them. Her heart ached. She had armies, riches, worlds under her command. Yet her children had chosen the protection of one man, a human. She whispered, almost to herself, "Why?" The human finally found his voice. His tone was rough but steady. "Because I didn't see princesses. I saw two children who needed help." The queen's eyes narrowed, but she did not speak. The silence that followed was heavier than any battle cry. The discovery was no longer a rumor. It was truth for all to see. The queen's daughters had been found alive, unharmed, and curled against the chest of a human wanderer. And the galaxy would never forget that image. The market had gone silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. All eyes were on the queen, who stood in her black and gold cloak, her daughters clutching a human's arms. Her soldiers waited for her command. One word, and they would cut him down. One gesture, and his blood would stain the sand. But she did not speak. The queen's eyes, burning like twin suns, locked on the human. She saw no fear in him, only exhaustion, dust, and a strange, stubborn strength. He stood tall, though he was trembling inside. His body looked weak compared to her warriors. Yet her daughters pressed against him as if he were the strongest shield in the universe. Her grip on the golden staff tightened. Rage battled with confusion inside her heart. Whispers filled the crowd. The princesses clung to him. Why would royal blood choose a human? Maybe he bewitched them. The queen raised her hand, and silence crushed the whispers. She stepped closer. The ground shook beneath each stride. The human's heart hammered, but he did not step back. The older daughter slid in front of him, spreading her arms wide, her small body standing between him and her mother. "Do not hurt him," she said. Her voice was clear, like a blade cutting through the silence. The queen's face hardened. "Step aside, child. He is not one of us." The younger girl clung tighter to the human's waist, her small voice trembling. "He is ours." For the first time in her reign, the queen felt powerless. She had burned cities, conquered empires, and broken kings. Yet two small voices pierced her armor deeper than any weapon. Her chest ached. Was this weakness, or was it truth? She turned her gaze back to the human. "Speak, wanderer. Why do my daughters cling to you as if you were blood?" The human swallowed hard. Every eye was on him, soldiers, merchants, the queen herself. His throat was dry, but his words came steady. "I didn't ask for them to follow me," he said. "I found them scared, hungry, alone. Any man with a heart would have helped." The queen's eyes narrowed. "You dare say my empire failed them?" He held her gaze. "I don't know about your empire. I only know they trusted me, and I couldn't walk away." The queen's rage cracked. For a moment, doubt flickered across her face. She turned to her daughters. "Is this true? Did you choose him?" The older girl nodded firmly. "Yes. He never lied. He never left us. He never called us a burden." The younger one's eyes filled with tears. "He carried me when I couldn't walk, Mama. He kept me warm when the night was cold. Please, don't take him from us." The queen's breath caught. Her daughters had never begged her for anything before. They were heirs to a throne, raised to be strong, untouchable. Yet here they were, pleading for a human. Around them, soldiers shifted uneasily. The people of the market stared in disbelief. The queen could kill him and prove her strength. But if she did, she would tear her daughter's trust apart. Her staff trembled in her grip. The choice before her was heavier than war. At last, she lowered it. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Her voice was cold, but it cracked with something deeper. "You live, human, because my daughters will it. But do not think this makes you my equal. You are nothing without their choice. The human bowed his head slightly, relief flooding his chest. He had expected death. Instead, he was still breathing. The older daughter stepped closer to her mother, but did not release his hand. "Thank you, Mama." The queen's eyes softened for a heartbeat as she touched her daughter's face. But when she looked back at the human, the fire returned. "If you betray them," she warned, her voice sharp as steel, "I will end you myself." Night fell again, and the queen returned to her war camp. But she could not sleep. She sat in her tent, staring at the flames. She remembered the way her youngest had buried her face in the human's chest, the way her oldest had stood between them like a warrior, protecting him. It should have been her they turned to. It should have been her arms they clung to. But it wasn't. She clenched her fists, whispering to the fire, "Why him? Why a human?" No answer came, only the crackle of flames. The market still buzzed with whispers long after she left. People spoke of the human who had carried the royal heirs, of how the queen herself had lowered her staff because her daughters had chosen him. A single discovery had turned into something bigger, a story that would not die, a story that would spread across the stars. And in the center of it all was the human, once a wanderer, now a name no one would forget. The queen's choice had been made, but destiny had only just begun. The queen's command had spared his life, but the human knew it was not mercy, it was a warning. Her words had been sharp as blades. "You live because my daughters will it. Betray them, and I will end you." Yet even after that, the two girls would not leave his side. When the queen's guards tried to guide them away, they clung to his arms. When the people of the market whispered, they held tighter, as if afraid he would vanish if they let go. The human felt the weight of every eye on him, alien merchants, armored soldiers, and most of all, the queen herself. He was no longer just a wanderer. He had become the center of something far greater than himself. That night, the queen summoned him to her war camp. He entered her great tent, the air heavy with incense and the heat of burning torches. The royal court stood in silence, their expressions unreadable. At the far end, on a throne of black steel, sat the queen. Her daughters stood beside her, their small hands locked round his sleeve, refusing to let go. The sight made the entire court shift uneasily. No law, no order, no tradition had prepared them for this. The queen's eyes burned into him. "Human, you carried what was mine. You protected what was royal. Tell me why." The human straightened, his voice steady though his chest was tight. "Because they needed me. Because no one else was there. Because I could not walk away." The queen's lips curled in a cold smile. Simple words. But the galaxy does not bend for simple men, do you understand what you have done? You humiliated my soldiers. You shook my empire. And yet my daughters cling to you. He met her gaze. Then perhaps the galaxy should change. Gasps filled the tent. No one dared speak to her like that. Not kings, not generals. And yet a human wanderer had just said it. The queen rose from her throne, her cloak sweeping the floor. She stepped down, towering over him, her staff glowing faintly with power. "You are fragile," she said. "You have no army, no throne, no bloodline, and still you stand before me. Tell me what gives you such courage." The human glanced at the girls beside him. Their small faces, full of fear yet full of trust, stared back. His voice softened. "Because they believe in me, and I refuse to let them down." The queen froze. His words cut deeper than she expected. She had commanded armies, crushed rebellions, broken men who swore loyalty. Yet no one had ever spoken with such quiet, stubborn truth. The older daughter stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. "Mother, you call him fragile. But when soldiers came, it was his arms that carried us. When the nights froze, it was his fire that kept us alive. You call him weak, but we call him safe." The younger one added, clinging to his hand, "He is not nothing, Mama. He is everything we needed." The court erupted in whispers. The daughters of the queen, heirs to the empire, declaring their faith in a human. Such words had never been spoken before. The queen silenced them with a glare. She stared at her children, then at the man they defended. Her heart waged war within her. To admit his worth was to lower herself. To deny it was to break her daughter's trust forever. The choice clawed at her soul. At last, she raised her staff high. The court held its breath. The human braced for death. But her words thundered differently. Hear me. This human has done what my armies could not. He found my daughters. He protected them when the galaxy failed them. His strength is not in muscle, nor in bloodline. His strength is in spirit. In this, he has shamed us all. The crowd gasped. Soldiers lowered their heads. Even the court bowed in disbelief. The Queen's voice grew louder, echoing through the tent. Let it be known across the stars, a human's worth is not measured in power, but in the trust of those who choose him, and my daughters chose him. The human stood frozen, stunned by her words. He had expected death, exile, or chains, but instead, he had been given something far stranger, recognition. The Queen stepped closer, lowering her staff until its golden tip rested just above his chest. Her eyes burned into his. You are no king, you are no warrior, but you are protector, and for that, I will not strike you down. Instead, I will remember you, forever. The girls pressed tighter against him, relief flooding their faces. When they left the camp that night, the market whispered with new voices, not of fear, not of scandal but of legend. They said a human saved the princesses. The Queen herself declared his worth. Perhaps humans are not weak after all. The story spread like fire, reaching beyond the desert, beyond the planet, beyond the empire itself. Everywhere, people spoke of the human who had stood before the Queen and lived, the human who had carried royal blood in his arms and earned their trust. As the stars stretched across the sky, the human sat with the two girls curled beside him. For the first time in years, he did not feel like a wanderer with no place to belong. He had become more than that. He whispered softly, mostly to himself. I thought I was nothing, but maybe I was wrong. The older girl opened one eye, smiling faintly. We told you. You're safe, the younger murmured sleepily. You're home. The human looked at them, his heart heavy and full. He had no crown, no riches, no power. But in that moment, he realized something greater. He had worth, and the galaxy would never forget it.